Hello, good evening. This is Dr. Marcea, and this is a special edition live. I am a physician, also a master destiny life coach, and I am here calling attention to Guillain-Barre Syndrome. I know it's something you probably have never heard of before, but I have several I have two survivors of this condition that are coming on the call tonight on this tonight to share their story, to share their challenges, but also to share their testimony. And as we encourage them, but also encourage those who may be afflicted with this. Okay, we're going to get all into it. I'm going to explain it all, but right now we just want to make sure that those that are supposed to be on the call are on the call. Okay, so for those I have Renee, Kelly, I have Keith Sewell. They're in the green room. Okay, so I want to make sure that they are able to get on. Go ahead and share to your social media feeds. I'm just checking to make sure that we are live and ready to go. And I see that we are. We are good to go. Thank you for watching, for tuning in. Again, I am Dr. Marcea, and this is a special edition talking about Guillain-Barre Syndrome. Okay, it's an autoimmune disease that causes severe motor weakness that is life-threatening. It's rare, but we all know people who have it. Okay, we have Keith Sewell. I'm going to call him by his official title. It's Dr. Keith Sewell. And we're going to get more into that as well. And it's been maybe about a year, and he's going to tell you all of the details. But this condition has been debilitating for him, not only from a personal physical perspective, but from an emotional perspective and also a financial perspective and emotional. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break it all down. We're going to hear from him. He's going to share his story. But I also have a very special person as well, Miss Rita Robinson, and she is the mother of one of my sorority sisters, Renee Kelly, and she also has had this disease, this condition, and she is coming to share her story, share her testimony, share how she has gone through it. And what we're doing, there's multiple reasons why we're doing this. We're doing this, one, to shed light on the condition, to give knowledge, and we're also coming to encourage Keith. Okay, but we're also coming to be a support. We did this on Sunday for a reason, because this is the Lord's Day, all of them the Lord's Day, but this is when we celebrate and we come together, we fellowship together, and we encourage each other. And there's a reason why we're all connected, and we're going to get into that as well. But before we start, I just want to thank you for being on the call. Go ahead and click the share button, click the like button. Go ahead and tag some people in who need to hear this. There are a lot of conditions in the world that we don't know about. Okay, there's always these new ones. We've been through COVID, we've been through Zika, we've been through the Ebola virus, we've been through all of the things, and it keeps coming, it keeps coming, it keeps coming. But there are some conditions that as a medical profession, we may know about it, but the masses don't. And just like when we talk about having a stroke or having a heart attack, there has been enough education that when you have chest pain, when you have numbness in your arm, when you have pain in your jaw, when you have indigestion, when you have all those other things, we start getting sweaty. Okay, we know those are the signs of a heart attack, or if you have a droopy face, or someone can't talk or they can't walk, and we start thinking stroke. This condition, even though it's rare, is not that rare, because I have two survivors on the call right now. And when we know the signs, when we know the symptoms, now we can act quickly, because that's what is needed in order to get the right services, to get you to the emergency room, to get you to where you need to be in order to get the help that you need. And so without further ado, I'm gonna bring on the gentleman of the hour, and let's see if I can get him in here. He's sitting in the green room, and his name is Keith Sewell. Keith Sewell, come to the stage.
Hello. That's a whole lot of pressure, Marcea. My God.
It's not pressure. It's not pressure. You have to just walk into the greatness. That's
Is
all.
that what you got to do? Okay. All right. I'm going to walk into this greatness.
Just walk into the greatness. That's right. That's right. But how
All
are
right.
you? Well, welcome
I,
to the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I wanted to just to kind of lay the foundation, and we know each other from college. Okay, so we both graduated in 1987. Where'd you go to high school?
Duval.
Duval. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so Duval. My zone school was Roosevelt,
Okay.
but that's not where I went. I went
Okay.
to Elizabeth Seton, and so
Okay.
we
Mm-hmm.
now descend on University of Maryland Eastern Shore as freshmen in the spring of 1987.
That's correct.
Okay, and somehow we just got connected. You know, there were lots of freshmen, and were you in Nettle Hall?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. So you were in the male dorm. I was in I can't remember the name of the dorm. Murphy. I was in
In
Murphy
Murphy. Yeah.
Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Murphy Hall. And so there was a lot of fellowshipping, and we were just doing what freshmen do.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a group of friends, and so we got to know each other then. And later on, I think you pledged. I think this may be.
Mm-hmm.
Did you? Did you?
You think? Yeah.
Go ahead.
You think?
Go ahead and shout them out. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. That's right.
All right. So look. So if you if you are a Keith's frat, go ahead and put something in the chat for us. Go ahead and do what you do.
Bros, don't
Okay.
embarrass me now. Don't embarrass me.
Go
if you're
ahead.
gonna act up, stay.
Right. Go ahead and let me go find where we are. I'm trying to see if I can make sure I can get
I promise you, they are lurking in the corners.
Are they lurking? All right. So go
I
put something in
promise
the chat. And so I'm a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And so one of the things about UMES is that Greek life was pretty lively.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big part of the campus. And one of the things that the Greeks, we were very close, a lot of interaction. And so this was another touch point with Keith and I. And the other thing I did not know at the time that I found out later, and your connection with the Pinckneys.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They're my godparents.
They're your godparents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so Keith's godparents were friends and went to the church that I grew up with, and my parents attended.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Pinckney actually was on campus the night that I crossed.
Mm-hmm.
She came with my mother and my mother's friend to be in my ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a special moment. And then we're going to go take it one step further. Do you remember the last time we saw each other in person?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Uh-huh. So back in 2006, my parents were killed in a horrific car accident. They ran into the back of a tractor trailer that was parked partially in the roadway. And I asked Keith to sing at my parents' service. And I remember you were hoarse. You were doing some you were performing, and you had something that night before. And can you just go ahead and walk me through that day?
I mean, just real simple. I was going to be there for you no matter what. I did have I was in a band, and I had a performance that night before, but it didn't matter. And you wanted me to sing I Won't Complain. And I actually grabbed my keyboard player the night before. I told him where he needed to be. And we literally, when I got up there, that was the first time we had even rehearsed it. And it was tough period, but by that time we were good friends. You might not remember, but we met when we were freshmen, you were in the honors program, and I was hanging with the honors students to try to keep my grades up. So, we used to have that study group at night,
Uh-huh.
right? And that's where we actually met, because we would be studying all night and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, all the other stuff. So, by the time uh, I needed to get up there to bless you and your family, it was so difficult, not just thinking about it, but seeing you and your sister kind of go through that. And I just wanted to do whatever I could to try to allow God to embrace you all through that process. So you've always been special in many different ways.
And thank you for that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted this is part of what we do. And again, I have to say this. Keith did not ask me to do this at all. I heard what was happening, and even after me making a donation to the GoFundMe, I'm like, you know what? There's something else I can do. There's something more for me to do to help you. And this is what came out of that. And it's an honor, and I thank you for who you have been. And I haven't been through this whole process with you, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have you share this kind of what's been going on.
Okay.
But even as I listen to your Facebook lives and your struggles and how you've stayed strong, and I can tell you right now, you look pretty darn good. Right? So
Thank you.
for those that are watching, you've hit there's in life, there's the mountains, and you're going up and down, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this big mountain. You have already hit the highest part of where things were bad. And for
Mm-hmm.
those that have seen some of the pictures,
Mm-hmm.
there's that one picture of you being in the hospital bed and you being intubated
Mm-hmm.
and all of the tubes and all of the machines and the things beeping,
Yeah.
okay, where you were fighting for your life. The
Yeah.
fight continues,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the part where now we can help you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to ask you at this point, you have Guillain-Barre syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to tell me in your words, what is this condition all about?
Okay. So I had never heard of Guillain-Barre, and there just wasn't a lot of research out there. It lies within the multiple sclerosis family, so that's the closest thing to relate to this autoimmune deficiency syndrome. But what ended up happening, first of all, they don't even know how you get Guillain-Barre. There's speculation you can get it through food poisoning or food, in the sense of eating raw seafood like sushi. They told me I could have gotten it from a tick bite, but there was no indication of either of those. But the reason why I'm trying to take on this awareness is because the doctors suspect that I got it from the COVID vaccine. There were a number of cases that have been increasing when I got sick, where it was due to the COVID vaccine. Um, uh, in essence, what happens is your body attacks the nerves in your body, and it can be bidirectional, meaning it can start at your feet and go up to your upper extremities in your hands, or it can start in your hands and go down to your feet. Either way, it has levels of severity, uh, and it just basically eats away the protective covering over your nerves, and that causes you to have the inability to either walk, use your hands, arm strength, and the last phase, it can attack your respiratory system, and cause you to have signs of respiratory failure. And from that point, once they are able to diagnose it, there are two ways to sort of fight it. And once they have identified the best route, then it's just a matter of time. You just have to, because the nerves heal on their own, there's not really anything you can do to get the nerves to heal faster. The only thing that you can do to help nerve development is to make sure that you have a good B12 and B6 levels in your blood. Other than that, it's just time. And so um, I got diagnosed in June 8th of last year, and we are entering into the 13th month. Actually, yesterday was my anniversary, and I still have a ways to go. I do want to just indicate here real quick um, that I would not have been able to do this if it wasn't for not just God, but friends like you, Marcia, and those that have been supportive of me, which is why it's so important to me um, that once I have healed and back on my feet, I want to start an awareness campaign. And the awareness campaign is centered around not just making people aware of Guillian-Barre. Um, Guillian-Barre attacks you. Um, I went down within 48 hours. I'd lost everything. But it also attacks your family. But once you are sick and you may be down for a while, there's a whole lot of work that has to be done when it comes to being a patient, advocating for yourself, and your family's got a lot of work to do in trying to care for you. And it sometimes is difficult when you're trying to care for somebody, you're trying to love somebody, you're trying to be a patient and heal, and you've got all of this administrative stuff that you also got to manage. And my goal is to, through my experience, help identify not just the gaps in the system, but what are the tools and resources out there so that if anyone goes through this after me, I would have created some resource or resources that will allow them to be able to sort of make the journey a lot easier.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Keith, you said something that I want you to elaborate on. You said within 48 hours, you had lost everything.
All right. So I'll explain it. So I was at work. At this when it happened, we were still in COVID, and I had some family members that were had gotten hit by COVID. So I was working. In addition to working during the day, I was working overnight with Amazon to try to get some extra income. So um, I was doing an overnight shift. It was about it might have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, and my legs were starting to swell a little bit, but um, they were getting heavy. That's the best way to describe it. So I was talking to some of my coworkers, and one of my coworkers said she thought it looked like it could have been blood clots because I was having some red spots on my legs. Either way, my ankles were swelling, and so the manager allowed me to go home, and I just went straight to the emergency room because I am a heart patient, and so I wanted to make sure that it was nothing related to my heart. I had some heart attacks early in life, and you got to really be careful with that. So anyway, I get to the emergency room, I get evaluated, and the doctor says he thought it was just edema, meaning swelling in the legs. He told me to go home, put my feet up, and keep an eye on it and contact my primary care physician. So I got home, I'll say around 4 o'clock. I went to bed, and when I got up about 7 or 8, and I was trying to walk to the bathroom, and I could not. I was losing my balance, and I couldn't lift my leg much. So I got in the hallway, and I just turned to my son in his room. I woke him up. I said, "Get up. I want to go back to the hospital." So we went back to the emergency room, and we were sitting in the lobby, and I remember this so vividly. The only way I could describe it was my legs felt heavy. So I typed in Google, "My legs feel heavy." Well, WebMD pops up, and the beauty of the internet, it allows you to sort of kind of go through, here are your symptoms, and this is what it could be. So they listed 4 conditions. I don't even remember what the first 2 was. The third one was GBS, never heard of it. And the fourth one was multiple sclerosis. And when you read the um, symptoms of multiple sclerosis, I wasn't there yet. So then I started reading about this GBS thing. And as I'm reading it, I'm starting to lose the ability. I couldn't walk, so I was in a wheelchair, but I started having difficulty typing on um, my phone. And my son's mother my son was sitting next to me, and his mother was on the right side of Jaden, and both of us were kind of looking at the same time. So when we were reading it, we both looked at each other and we just knew this was bigger than we thought. So we didn't say anything, and then they called me back in the emergency room. We went back in the room, and then the doctor rushed in, and she said, "You need to." How did she put it? She said basically, "You're not going anywhere." She said, "I cannot believe they let you go home." She said, "We think you have GBS," and she said, "And we've got to run some tests immediately." And as she's telling me this, I was starting to really get to the last part of my capabilities. And I remember I text a couple of my friends that I could text, and I just shot them a text, gave up my phone, and I just kind of sat back and then kind of journey started. Um, the way they do the testing, they not only did they have to do a spinal tap, but they had to run all of these tests to rule out a bunch of stuff. So they were just pulling blood at the vials. I mean, all taking blood from everywhere. At the end of testing everything and getting all of these negatives, and then they did the spinal tap, they confirmed that I had GBS. And then that's when they began explaining to me and my family what my road ahead was going to be looking like, and how difficult things may end up being.
Mhm, mhm. So thank you for sharing that journey. And as I'm looking at you, I can see the
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 trick.
trait, the trait. And you mentioned earlier that as the muscles, the type of GBS that's most common is the type that starts like yours, starts at the feet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called an ascending paralysis, and it
Mm-hmm.
ascends up and affects all of the muscles in the body, including your respiratory muscles, your
Mm-hmm.
lung muscles.
Mm-hmm.
So can you walk us through what happened with this?
Sure. So I was okay with not okay. I couldn't walk, and then but I let me just point this out. Interestingly, I couldn't walk, but my legs, I could lift my legs and my knees and bend them, but I couldn't use my hands. And so as we're waiting and running tests, I'm asthmatic, so I was starting to have difficulty breathing. And I kept telling them I couldn't breathe. And the nurses were looking at the screens and saying, "Well, you got an 80 some percent or 90% oxygen level, da da da." And it just didn't matter to me. I just couldn't breathe. So I'm communicating with my family, and I'm starting to lose my voice. So then I didn't have any voice. So I had to start, I couldn't talk, I should say. I had to start spelling out stuff by blinking. So they got a piece of paper, and we would go through the alphabet. And from experience helping other people, I knew that something was not going right, but I wasn't afraid. And I'll be very honest with you. It became very clear to me that God was going to have to take over. I had accepted that this is something that I'm just going to have to just release to God. But the reason I want to point out this breathing thing is I was fighting with the nurses and the family. And so I signaled to my brothers, and I said, "Tell them to put me into a medically induced coma, because I know that in some conditions you want to give your body the fighting chance. So they may put you in a medically induced coma to allow them to work for everything else while your body is trying to heal." So they asked the nurses and the doctors. They said, "No, we're not doing that." So I then asked them to be intubated because I knew I couldn't breathe. I was tired of fighting with the nurses, and I just didn't know what was going on. What I didn't know at that time was that was the Guillain-Barre. I thought I was just having some issues, and they thought I was having a panic attack, and I may have been, but we later found out that that was part of the symptoms, and the doctors knew that when it got to that point, it was bad. They just didn't tell us then, right?
Right.
So they agreed to intubate me, but they also, when I woke up, they had intubated me and gave me a trach. And I remember kind of looking back at my brothers. I looked over at my brother Waden, and I told him, I said, "Go get a power of attorney for him, and I'm turning everything over to you." And I went to sleep, and I woke up what I thought was 2 days later with the trach in, acting like Keith. I woke up cutting up. I couldn't talk, but I was, joking with my family. only to find out months later that it really was 7 weeks that I'd been laying there.
Wow.
They were waiting for me to kind of respond, and they were telling me that I was coming in and out. And my son's mother said that I would wake up and curse the nurses out, and then I would go back to sleep. But they said that I started moving my feet, and that was what they were waiting to find out. My brothers told me later on that they were talking about flying me to Baltimore to shock trauma, but they decided that since they had started this round of antibiotics, they wanted to wait. And so it was from the time I woke up, I thought I was, I honestly was kind of watching the scene, but that began a long road, and we can kind of get into the details later. But
Right.
that's when I kept the trach in and all of that for 2 months, and then I got transferred to 3 different hospitals. At the end of the day, I spent 8 months in the hospital or rehab centers, and I came home to continue my recovery in February, and I'm in physical therapy and occupational therapy as well. One last point I just want to make that kind of to complete the story. From laying in the bed all that time, unfortunately, I ended up, my hands began to get contracted, which means that they were sealing, the bones were sealing. And so, although I'm not done, but I'm still going through physical therapy with Guillian-Barre, I am now going through a series of hand operations because I've lost the ability to use my hands totally. And so they're doing surgical work on it, in addition to waiting for the nerves and the muscles in my hand. They're the last extremities to kind of show signs of healing. They still are not firing like they should. So the Guillain-Barre is still, we're waiting for that to heal better and kind of end this thing.
Gotcha.
And trying to get back to some level of normal life.
Almost, yeah. And so thank you for sharing. Your story is powerful, from the place of not being able to use your legs, use your arms, you use your lungs.
Yeah.
And for you to have the wherewithal to say, intubate me, and to put me in a medically induced coma, most patients aren't going to be able to articulate that that's what they need.
Right.
And so I want to pause right here just for a minute, because I want to bring Renee Kelly to join the conversation. And as she comes, she is one of my sorors, and we had a conversation 20 plus years ago that I think is important to this conversation. So I'm going to bring Keith. I'm going to have you stay with me as well.
Okay.
Here she comes. Hey, Renee, how are you?
Hello, I'm Soror.
Hey, Soror. Look, we're having a little UMS party.
That's right.
Because Keith was my Miyaka as well when I was.
Oh, that's right. You were Miyaka.
Now, Renee.
He used to give me some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but I couldn't eat those.
So wait a minute, Renee. You will get me in a whole lot of trouble.
I know.
I paid for that,
He
but
told me when I was online.
but yeah, all right. But Marcea, that I was trying to leave that part out. I was actually your sweetheart when you don't mind. So, Lord have mercy. All right, look, look at all the laughing. See, quarters. See, oh Lord, Renee. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Renee. Go ahead.
Real. We all family.
We are. It don't matter. I have. Oh my God. Okay.
That is part
of my journey.
And that juice, it helped us.
Yeah, it did.
That's hilarious. Thank you for Renee for bringing up those memories. That took me back a little bit.
Yes.
Oh, Keith, you all right?
Ooh, yeah, I'll be all right. I know what's going to happen after this. Oh man, it's all good.
It's all good.
Thank God I play this by myself, so I know how to kind of fight back. But them jokers gonna be ready for me.
So Renee, so way back when, I want to say back 1998 ish.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had a conversation, And I want you to just to kind of just to share with us what that conversation was about.
Okay, so this was December of 1998. My mother had gone into doctor's hospital and they didn't know what was going on. This was 25 years ago.
Wow.
And we thought it was the flu. They sent her home, just and she can tell her side of it. But by the time we got to doctor's hospital, she just involuntarily was moving her leg. I was saying, Mom, stop moving your leg. And it would stop for a little bit and then it would just start moving again. Or her hand. And she was just tired. She just was not responsive. And I kept going to the doctors. At this point, my grandparents had left, my father had left, and I pretty much got on the doctor's nerves. I was like, something is wrong with my mother, and it's not a flu, it's not MS, something else, and you need to figure this out. And at that time, I knew Marcea was my big sister. At this point, we're Sewell. She's a doctor. She's in medical school. I'm thinking, who do I know? Who do I know? I call Marcea. Marcea, these are the symptoms that my mother's having. This is what's going on. Do you know of anything? And at that point, Marcia said, it sounds like it could be Guillian-Barre. What? What is that? I have no clue. Never heard of this. Now, she's in medical school.
Mm-hmm.
She's there, and I'm in the hospital with the doctors, and they can't help me.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, it was one doctor. He finally, I guess he got tired of me, and he finally said, let's do a spinal tap. And that's when they moved forward and they did the spinal tap and they realized that she had Guillain-Barré. But that is the worst feeling, to know that someone is sick and you're there for help and they don't know.
Yeah.
And when they finally did that, that's when they had the diagnosis. And then we're like, okay, now what? And at that point, it's a medication that she had to get um, three transfusions, but it was they had to get it from somewhere else, and it had to be shipped in, and it was just a matter of waiting. Just as you said, Keith, you just had to wait, and that is the worst. So it finally came. Like every day I was going down to the pharmacy. Is it here yet? Is it here yet? Is it here yet? They were like, it's not here. We will let you know when it gets here. We believe me, we're going to rush it up to your mother. It finally came, and it was a process. It was just a slow drip. And they did one bag, and I think like the next day they did another bag, and then the next day. And then so you're thinking in your mind, okay, great. Now this is it. And they had to explain, no, just as Keith said, that's the kind of, I guess, stop the progression, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But now it's just a matter of waiting for the nerves to reactivate, to realize what they need to do. So, but at the same time, my mother can't talk, she can't move. Just as she at this point she has a trach. We have the alphabet. She can only blink once for yes, twice for no. We're spelling out things. What do you want? And she's in the ICU. And what a blessing. Just so happened at Doctor's Hospital, they had just opened a brand new ICU unit.
Wow.
And she was like the first person there.
Wow.
And it was, I think that because they caught it so early, and she was able to get the medication so quickly, I think that helped. But she was in the hospital from, I remember it was around my birthday, mid-December 13th. And she went back to work in April. And that's fairly quick. So, but, and once this happens, we're like, who has this? I'm a social worker. So I'm like, what is this about? So we found out that a pastor at our home in North Carolina, he had it. You find that someone, oh, well, what is this? So even when going to the doctors, like, what is it? What is, no one could really explain what is this and how did she get it? My parents, they went to dinner. She thought she got it from the food that she had eaten, or she thought she had maybe she caught it from someone. We just didn't know. Again, 25 years ago. So I think that was the most difficult part. And then just watching my mother basically just deteriorate, in a sense of can do anything. I mean, absolutely nothing. So, and that was a whole thing with the hospital. First they were saying you couldn't, and I had just started my new job in October, and I'm calling my coworker, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Thank God my job was so understanding. Um, and I was, because I lived in the hospital for literally a month and a half when she was at doctor's, and then she went into national rehab for probably another month and a half. And it was just round the clock. And it was the most difficult thing to watch your mother, it's nothing she can do, nothing. And we're literally holding the alphabet and asking her to spell out what she wants, and that's how we communicated.
Yeah. Wow.
So
That Keith, I'm sure you're hearing some similarities
Oh,
in
it's amazing.
in
Um,
the story.
I owe your mother a thank you, and I'm gonna tell you why. Her experience probably helped me because I was in doctor's hospital in that same ICU,
Mm.
and I can tell you, I could tell that they were familiar with this and what to do. Certainly, probably didn't have the same nursing staff, but you understand when hospitals
yeah, yeah,
go
yeah.
through stuff, they keep, and so um, that's just that very similar. The other part I wanted to mention, the process that your mother went through is one of the two ways that they fight it. So when I got it, they pump you with all these antibiotics. The problem is that they don't know if that's going to work or not.
Mm,
If it doesn't work, then they got to drain all of your blood because it has something to do with plasma. And Marcea, you can help me. But
Mhm.
then they would have taken me through that process that your mom had to go through. The problem is all of those antibiotics that I would have already taken, that they would have just drained all of that out, and I'd have been starting from scratch. And so I think it's interesting to kind of see the progression from when your mom had it. What they it sounded like they only had that one method. Now they have just the two. But again, like you said, your family is sitting there watching you,
mm,
and you can't do anything. So
mm.
I thank her for weathering that storm and even being an NRH because I went there too. So that's
Excellent.
amazing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, Renee, I'm going to
Mhm.
pause you. I know that your mother is on standby, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take you off screen, and so
Okay.
I'm going to put you in the green room,
Okay.
and then I'm going to bring you back on and have your mother join us. I can't wait to have her share with Keith and to speak to him directly about her journey.
Yes.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. We'll see you in a minute.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Um, and so Keith, I want to talk to you about the process, the treatment.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to reset the room as well. If you are just joining, this is a a live about Guillain-Barre syndrome. I have my special guest with me, Keith Sewell. I just had my soror, Renee Kelly, whose mother also had this 25 plus years ago. And what happens is it is a type of an autoimmune type disorder where your body attacks a part of you. Okay. And for this particular condition, it is the nerves. And the nerves, it causes antibodies that now attacks the nerves, and it causes there's a sheath on the nerve that gets eroded, and so therefore the nerve firing doesn't happen the way that it should, and so the nerves just don't work. And it starts usually, it can go both ways, but the one that's most common is that it starts in your feet and works up. And so you get pretty much, you get paralysis. And when it gets to the level of your lungs, now you cannot breathe. And most patients at this point have to get intubated long term. They end up having a trach. Instead of it being in your mouth, they put it here. You're on a feeding tube, and that is where we are. And so some of the treatment, there's two ways to treat it. Both are types of infusions. One is plasmapheresis, where they draw the blood out, they draw the plasma out, and they wash your blood pretty much of the antibodies that are attacking yourself, and then they put it back. And then it's also something called IVIG, which is a type of immunoglobulin that goes to, and it kind of sops up, if you will, those antibodies that are now attacking the body. Okay. But the real treatment is time and then rehabilitation. Okay. So, Keith, can you share what kind of make comments on what types of treatment that you had?
Okay. So once they intubated me, obviously, in healthcare now, they kind of try to section it out. So all Doctors Hospital was interested in at that time was trying to diagnose and get me on a path to recovery. They weren't interested in rehabbing, but the goal was they could not transfer me to an acute rehabilitation hospital where I would have been given a feeding tube until I was able to breathe without the respirator. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, I had to pass this test. So mind you, I'm having these panic attacks. But I had to take these tests, and I wasn't comprehending that this breathing machine is smart enough that when I start having complications breathing, it would cut on and help me. I was just terrified that I was going to stop breathing and die. And so, anyway, once I was able to go through all of that, I had to be able to breathe. For them to turn the breathing machine off for an hour, and then they turn it off totally, and I had to be able to last 24 hours. If I was able to do that, then that gave them the signal that they can transfer me to a acute rehab. So they did that. I then transferred to an acute rehab hospital, where the plan was that I would go into a more intense rehabilitation rehab process where I would work with physical therapy, and they were going to deal with the feeding tube. Unfortunately, they were having some complications, and so I ended up spending 4 months without food that long. And I was able to start rehab, but it was just they were massaging my hands and trying to get me to stand up. And so when I was in that hospital, I had to have an operation to deal with the feeding tube, and that went bad, and I ended up having a blocked bile. So they then, in the 2-month period, they then had to rush me to Washington Hospital Center to fix that. Mm-hmm. When I got to Washington Hospital Center, the surgical team did what they needed to do, got the feeding tube working. But by the grace of God, I had been, and this is just God, but when they did the trach, I was not supposed to be able to talk, but I was able to talk and communicate like almost on a hoarse voice. So, but my experience at that rehab hospital was not good. And I won't go into any details, but what I can tell you, it got to a point where my family would not let me stay there overnight without somebody being in the room. The point that I do want to make is in being fair to the medical community, the nurses and the techs, and maybe some of the doctors, they've heard of Guillian-Barre, but not a lot of people had experience working with patients that had Guillian-Barre. So I spent a lot of time in these scenarios where I had to keep trying to articulate to the nurses or the techs what I couldn't do. They would do stuff like bring me my medicine and hand it to me because they weren't aware I couldn't use my hands to even hold the little cup of medicine, things of that nature. And so I experienced that throughout all of my hospital stay. where it began to be a little frustrating. In addition to that, when you're a patient and you have suffered something that traumatic, right? And it is traumatic. Every time you got to talk about it, you pull all of that emotion and energy up, right? So it was just a struggle. It was a struggle just trying to understand, be a patient, try to be patient, and heal. But
Mm-hmm.
I had to relive it. So that occurred, in the acute, in when I was at Washington Hospital Center, and my family's goal was to get me into National Rehabilitation Hospital in DC, because that was one of the best rehabilitation hospitals in the country. And it was just a blessing that when I got to Washington Hospital Center, and they are all part of the same um, hospital network. So Washington Hospital Center and National Rehab share like almost buildings, if you will. They all on that campus downtown. So
Isn't that MedStar? Is it MedStar Health?
MedStar, yes, I couldn't
Mhm.
remember. Thank you.
Mhm.
So when I was in Washington Hospital Center, we just felt I had a better chance of getting in NRH. And I ended up getting in National Rehab. I spent 2 months there. I left, or I was discharged November 17th, Founders Day, and I lasted at home for 5 days. I had to go back into the hospital. I had a bowel blockage again, and I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I was in so much pain. So we called the ambulance, and I went back in the doctor's hospital. And from that point on, they knew I couldn't probably be home. So once they got me placement, it took about a month to give me placement, and then I spent the next couple of months. This was in December, and from December to February, I was in a another rehabilitation hospital slash nursing home. Again, just trying to get me to a place where uh, I could sort of take care of myself. Um, at that time, I could not bathe myself. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself, things of that nature. But in order for them to let me come home, I had to be able to do those things. And that meant identifying assisted devices to be used to be able to do all of those things. I won't go into the details. I'm just simply trying to paint the picture really for family members, because what I want people to understand is when you're in these situations, it doesn't have to be Guillain-Barre. When you have a sudden uh, illness, there's a lot of work that has to be done, and that's what's so important to me. I got even though I told you I was working overnight. I was a private contractor, so that meant as soon as I got sick, if I wasn't working, I couldn't charge clients for any money. So now that income stream is cut off. I'm working overnight at Amazon, and that's a little bit of money, but that's like fun money, right? Well, I'm not able to go to Amazon. Not only that, Amazon didn't even know why I wasn't at work. I just was AWOL for 2 days straight, and Amazon's policy is if you AWOL for 2 days, they automatically fire you. So it was a few months, a few weeks, I should say, when I finally was able to tell my brother to call the our little help desk, let them know what happened. And Amazon was gracious enough and blessed me where when they found out what happened, they just simply reversed the decision, changed the system, and gave me health insurance for 3 months,
Wow.
and then allowed me since then. I've been on what they call non-paid leave of absence, which will allow me as soon as I'm able to go back to work. If there's a slot where I was working, they'll bring me back. If not, they have a disabilities unit that will work with you to try to figure out where they can place you within the company. And so big shout out to Amazon. I don't,
Yes.
people
Wow.
talk all the time, but Amazon is a machine. And whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deal with Amazon. But there was a lot of work that had to be done. I hadn't paid any bills. My lease had come up, and I'm in the hospital. So luckily, my leasing office, my son and his mother had to go down there and tell him what happened. And so there's been a lot of activity that I'm blessed to say people were helping me while I was just laying in this bed. And I just want family members and people to say, listen, if you get sick, who or where can your family find the password to your email? Where can they find out how to get into your phone or something of the nature? Because if you need to pay your bills, if nobody has access to your bank account, nobody's going to give it to you, right? And you and I know, and I'll stop here. In 30 days, you can damage your credit score badly, because if you miss a mortgage payment, right? You understand, car payment, and they don't. It doesn't matter how sick you are. You know, everybody's
Not at all.
understanding, but don't nobody reverse the decision. So, um, I'm living. I have no income coming in, and I had Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is one of the more reputable ones. But then I had to go on Medicaid. And Medicaid, I'm sorry, health insurance is health insurance, and if you got a better plan, you get better service. But when I had to go on the state system. There's a whole other ball game that had to be played. So um, that's kind of why this is so passionate for me. In addition to, I'm still here. Um,
Yeah.
my high school friends set up the GoFundMe because of this, and so I thank God for my high school friends. I thank God for my fraternity brothers that have made sure that my rent and my car payments are done since then. They've been carrying me for these 13 months, and a few friends that have been cooking for me and things of that nature. So I'm gonna stop there. I apologize.
Right. We're going to come back to this. I do want to bring Ms. Rita Robinson to the stage. She is Renee's mother. Welcome, Ms. Robinson. How are you?
Hi,
I'm
fine,
Miss
thank
Robinson.
you. So good to be here.
It is so good to see you, and I love that smile that you have. And I know when we talked the other day, just to and you've been so gracious to come onto this show with us, this program with us, this live with us, just to share your story and to encourage Keith. So if you could share with us how how this all started for you those many years ago.
First, I want to just say to Keith, I feel so close to you now, and I've heard
Yeah,
your story, and it parallels so well with mine. I'm telling you, even though it was 25 years ago, things are still similar to what you had
yes,
undergone,
man.
what I had. So, dear brother, we're in this together. Just
Thank
want
you.
you to,
It really means a lot.
yes, indeed. When my story started, as my daughter said, in December of 1998. However, prior to that, something strange happened to me. I was on getting ready to go to work. So I'm getting ready, and all out of the clear blue sky, I just dropped to the floor, completely, just like a doll, just a rag doll. I just fell, just dropped right to the floor. Bam. And I couldn't imagine what in the world is happening to me. I just fall like that. And I was there by myself. My husband, has already gone to work, and I just sat there and thought about it. I didn't have any. What happened to me the day before? Nothing. I was fine. Um, but when I fell, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't have any pain. I wasn't injured, and I was even able to get back up. And I didn't. I didn't lose any strength in my legs. I just said, okay. It was kind of. It was different. It was weird, but I just forgot about it and kept moving. I just went to work, and didn't that didn't occur again. But then I put the things together, and I see how that related to. And later on in December, like Renee said, around her birthday, that it happened. That I was taken. I got sick, and I was getting weak in my legs. Um, and my husband, he said, "Wait, we're just going to go." But we went to Washington Hospital Center.
Mm.
So when I got there, they examined me and they gave me a CAT scan. So it came back, it was negative. So they said to me, "Well, we don't know what happened." They said, "We think you just had an anxiety attack." And so, okay. So I'm still weak, but my husband's able to help me. I get back in the car, I go home. The next day, I'm getting weaker and things are not looking well. And in fact, he had to, before we could go out again, I was just weak. I would just felt like a rag doll. He had to clean me up, wash me up, do it all. And then he said, "Well, we're not going back to Washington Hospital Center. We're going to Doctor's Hospital." I said, "Okay." So we did. And this time I didn't come out. And when they put me on examination table, there I was. I was flat out. I was completely paralyzed from from up here all the way down to I couldn't move anything. I felt I could think and hear and see, but that was the extent of it. And I just felt trapped in my body, like a body that didn't move, wasn't existing anymore. I was just living in a dead body, like a
Wow.
me. I would just, it was just a worst feeling. And so they didn't know. And when I finally took me upstairs, they didn't first admit me to, like you said, ICU. They put me in a room, and then they, well, while I was still in the emergency area at Doctor's Hospital, the nurse said they had a very strong discussion about what did I have, and they were saying, other was saying, oh, it must be MS. I think they even thought Lou Gehrig at one time, and it just they knew it was something, but they never knew that it was GBS. And like you said, Keith, the only way they knew, they finally gave me that spinal tap, and there was the evidence. I was diagnosed with GBS. So now, what they're going to do? So I go into to ICU, and they gave me the last that infusion that Renee explained, and the drip, and so I went through that. But it was actually on Christmas Day. They put me to sleep. I woke up with a trach and a feeder tube. That was my gift. So there I was. And from there, they just driven. They wasn't trying to. It was no rehab. It was just trying to get me settled for the next step, which would be to the rehab center, I'm sure. But it was just unbelievable. I could not say, I couldn't do anything. I was totally paralyzed. There was no movement, no life in me at all. It was just, I couldn't even believe it myself. It was just something that um, they really didn't know what to say. In my job, I told them, they just went, what? It was, and mind you, this was 1998, and nobody, but in the medical field, but I mean, nobody could to explain. I couldn't explain. They didn't know. They were looking at looking up everything, researching themselves to find out what in the world happened to me. And of course, you already explained it so well. Thank you, Marcea, and of course you, Keith. Your same situation. And but I stayed there, like Renee said, about a month and a half, I guess. And they got me pretty much stabilized. But again, and you know what? The beauty of one thing I have to say, it was a nurse there could read my lips, literally. She couldn't. So I didn't have to go through the alphabet with her. I had to do it with Renee and family, but she could understand everything I was said. That meant that I could get things done. The thing, I don't know what it was, something about when I was sleeping, when I was laying on this pillow, it was so hot. And I would tell them, when somebody could come, would you just turn my pillow over? It was just unbearable. And so when Renee came, I had to go through the alphabet, and I had to blink. And she'd go, is it A? And I go, blink. And that was no. And he said, was it C? And I go, blink. Oh, okay. But how, you had to go through every alphabet to get to turn my pillow over, would you please? So, but the nurse, she knew that, okay, no problem. But so finally, I went to National Rehab Hospital, and I got excellent care there. I really did. Um, but things, was I had to just take things for granted. Like when they took me out, what they call out in the open space, to try to help to move me and, give me some exercise to build, or everything therapy that, that helped me move forward in movement. They actually had to take like a pizza board and shove it under me. I'm in the bed, and they tilted it, and I slowly went into the wheelchair. That's how I got into it. That's how bad it was. So they rolled me out, and we did these therapy exercises that they had for me. But I still had the trach, and I still had the feeding tube. So um, they things, progressively I started moving somewhat, and they said okay. Um, and I had physical therapy, had occupational therapy, and I had respiratory therapy. And before, let me regress. When I was in doctors, like Keith said, they were trying to wean me off my oxygen, but I wasn't having it because I'm thinking, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to be able to breathe. So I never slept very well. I knew when the guy was coming in and was adjusting the oxygen for me, and I was looking at him, and I said, watching him, I never went to sleep. I had no sleep because every time he walked in, he said, thinking, he was thinking, I said, I was right at it. And I said, I'm not, to myself, I know I'm watching you. And after you turn those knobs, turn it up and don't turn it down. So that went on for a long time.
No, that's right.
Ooh, that is
So
funny.
I had, so that when I left, he probably is glad that I did too. So when I left and went to NRH, and I still, again, I had the trach, I had the feeding tube. So, but they took me by ambulance, and I was moving us somewhat, but I couldn't pick up anything. I was trying one night.
Mm.
I have to tell you this. One night, I'm in a room by myself, and it was a long room. It could have been at least two people other than myself. And that room was a huge room. And I was trying to reach to get something. I don't know if it's a buzzer to tell her. And do you know I fell out the bed?
That was so I'm so glad they really helped. It was difficult to get her into national rehab. Not difficult. They didn't want her to go there first. And when we got her in the room, she was the only one in this room. And me being the social worker, and they knew me before we got there. And at that time, I wasn't married. And Miss Young, come look at the room. Let's see. We want to show you where your mother's going to be. And I had them doing tests. Like I was like, she can't push a button. How are you going to know when she needs you to come? And literally, my father is like, oh my God. I was like, but if something happens to her, what's going to happen? No one's going to know. And I pushed the button. Nobody came. I went to the nurse's office. I said, look, no one came. I'm pushing the button. You still didn't come. I said, you need to figure out a system. We got the administrator involved, all of this. And so she was there for a while. And the day that she fell, the administrator called me. They was like, Miss Young, first of all, your mother's doing well. They were just really nervous. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Well, she's okay. I said, okay, but what is going on? Why are you calling me?
Let me tell you what happened.
Okay.
What happened, I fell out the bed. I was trying to reach, and I literally fell out the bed. No, nothing. So I was able to kind of move myself over it at the bottom of the bed, and I was doing like this, trying to get somebody that was walking up and down the hallway to see me. But what happened, if I had fallen, there's supposed to have been a light that was flashing, a red light in that room to say, go in there and see what. but the light was not operative.
Mhm.
So nobody knew I was in there on the floor trying to bang to get some. So finally, somebody, it was probably a visitor, saw me on the floor, and then that's how I got. And they rushed in, got me up, and put me back in the bed. Blah blah blah. It was just
Yeah, that was a lot. That was that could have been a major thing,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if something else had happened. But I'm glad you were able to get
yeah. They
off of the floor. So you were at the rehab hospital. Can you tell me? And I know that the NRH was instrumental in your recovery.
yes.
Um, how long did it take you to recover?
I was there from December, a month and a half, and well, that was in doctors, and then another month and a half with them. I went to I went. They have a assimilated kitchen, so they put me in. I was there to see how
Mm-hmm.
well I can,
Yeah.
like reach for things, and if I could hold things, if I could cook some things, or make a scramble an egg or something. So they even have a simulated car that I'd see if I could even drive again. And so I went through that. So it was good to, they actually, for me, I, instead of like Sundays, you rest and they wouldn't come in your room. They came every day for me.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you in there? How long were
It
you
was at
at
the
rehab?
rehab,
About
and
another month
it
and a
was about
half.
another month and a half.
Another month.
When I
Okay.
left, it was in uh, around end of April, around the middle of April.
No, March. It was around March
March, you
because you
think?
came home. Her birthday is March
25th.
25th, and we gave her a surprise
Okay,
birthday
so it was
party
that
when she
soon.
came home.
Uh,
Okay.
Gotcha.
So she was in the hospital until March, and she
Okay.
went back to work probably
Probably
in April.
end of
But
April.
thank God she had that a good gummy job, and
Right.
she
Right.
had sick leave.
Yes,
She never took leave, so she had sick
Had
leave.
enough.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
least like she had like 1 day or 1 week
1 week
left.
left.
So thank God, my father and her still had a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks.
Right.
And that I just what you talk about, Keith. Missing one check could change their lives, but
Yeah.
thank God she had that resource. But
Right.
she went back to because the doctors were telling us, and my father and I prepared that she'll never walk. They came, they said you need to get ramps in your house. My father was trying to figure out, how she would basically, they were saying she would have to live on the first floor of their home. She would never walk steps. But praise God, my mother's
Um,
driving and she went back to work. She was able to
Mhm.
retire from work. So
Yeah. So
it's a
look,
testimony
Miss
for us.
Robinson, I have a very important question.
mhm.
Okay. And Keith, this is for you.
mhm.
Okay. Can you tell me what percent of recovery you had from not being able to be completely paralyzed except for you blinking your eyes to now? What percent are you recovered?
She said,
What you
um, I feel that I have completely recovered. I really do. I don't have any weaknesses, or I can do everything that I did prior to having GBS.
Hmm. Hmm. Keith, did you hear that?
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually what the research says. Which is why I'm optimistic. The interesting
Yes.
thing about my case, not to act like I'm all that, but the point is, the GDS part I probably will get through. It's the other part, the fact that because I was in the hospital during COVID,
Mhm.
so or the residual of COVID, so um, I didn't have family members that probably could be there where they were exercising my hands and keep them limber while I was laying there. So, what I'm dealing with now is more so from laying there for 4 months or 5 months and not moving in my hands contracting. Now, the lack of development in the nerves in my hand, again, that's a matter of time. And so that's why I wanted to meet you so badly, man, because even in NRH, there were 5 of us there. They don't tell you what people's medical condition, but you start to kind of figure it out. And there were 5 people that I met that had Guillain-Barre, like I did, but all of us were at different stages.
yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody told me how bad it could get. It really quickly when I was in NRH, and I'm kind of setting my goal as to, I'm gonna be able to get back on my feet, this time, because Lord, if I had known how to get, I was gonna have Guillian-Barre, I might have gotten married, but anyway, that's a whole other show. But when you home by yourself, you got to try to figure out, how do I survive, right? Because my brothers did not sign up for taking care of me in the hospital. I can promise you that. So, nobody was thinking that they were gonna have to bathe me and all that kind of stuff, and neither was I. But when I was in NRH and I'm at occupational therapy session, I was telling my therapist, well, it'll be about 2 months. I'll be back on my feet when I get home. And she turned, she said, Keith, did anybody ever tell you how sick you really were? And I said, no. And she said, people who have gotten intubated with GBS, they don't come home. And so I was looking at her like, what? So I remember I was saying, wait a minute. So I'm thinking my family doesn't know. So one of my dear friends, she's a nurse, and I called her immediately, and I was like, did you know how sick I was? And she said, yeah. She said, we wasn't allowed to come up there, but the way your family was telling me what the doctors were saying, I knew. Then I called my brother and I said, did you know? And he was like, yeah. And so it was at that point that they revealed to me, and of course, this is now 7 months or maybe even 8 months in, that I was just that sick. But that's kind of the experience you go through when you're a patient. You have no idea what, how it's going to affect you. And when you talk about the call bell, every hospital I went to, they did not have the appropriate call bell technology to assist me. And so I was so angry when I kind of came to a doctor's, because my family had tied a cat bell to my ankle because the button wasn't working. And in order to get the nurse's attention, I would have to wiggle my foot. Now, as a cue, you're not putting a cat anything on my body. So, of course, when the brothers would come and visit, I would hide my legs and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say here, the family had to figure out, what can we do? While the hospital was like, oh, we don't have because I couldn't push the button. I didn't have enough strength that I could push the button. And they had to go to the stroke unit to find the device, but they just didn't have any available. It was all being used, and I had to wait until I got one. In every hospital, I had to deal with this. And so the only thing at NRH, they were so advanced that, they had it. Not only that, they were bringing iPads and everything that I might need, that I was going to need. And that area you're talking about downstairs in the lower level, that's that area where they make sure that they have a simulation lab for everything. And so I wasn't able to. I had to be able to get in and out of the car. I wasn't allowed to drive when I left. But it's just amazing the similarities of our story. But yeah, and I'm hoping that people get family members get optimistic that okay, this is going on, but we just got to work this process. Let this process go through, because you gotta keep the patient in check. And I struggled a lot because at one point I had to kind of be the patient and the advocate, because again, family can't come in but certain days and all that other kind of stuff. But it was just a lot. It was a lot to deal with. And so thank you for sharing your story, because it really comforted me, and it allowed me to believe I'll be 100% back. I'm sorry.
And I'm surprised, because even in our age, my mother had to go through counseling, and maybe because of COVID, she had to meet with a therapist as well.
Yeah, and NRH even went as far. This might be TMI, but here's my point. They had me they had this little session, and they asked me if I want to go. I was like, what is this all about? And it was called something about extended happiness anyway. And it was myself as a GBS patient. My roommate was in a car accident, so he was paralyzed waist down. He was in it. I had another guy was in an accident. He was like almost paralyzed except his arms. But here's my point. In that meeting, NRH was working with patients to help them start to deal with the idea that they may not be as intimate as they used to be, and what resources are out there to help them through that, if that makes sense. And that was huge to me, because what it told me is that NRH was that advanced in understanding how to, when you look at the holistic approach of these patients, they had sample things. It was all kind of stuff. But the point is, they were tools that allowed me to, when I was laying in that bed, I was able to figure out, well, what tool may I need to be able to help me brush my teeth? And I would just go on Amazon, and Amazon has a assisted living button, and you push that and they bring all these tools up. And my family started, we were buying every and anything that we could come across, and then they would bring it to the nursing home and I would test them out and see if they work. And I fell out the bed trying to be grown, got out the bed, and I was embarrassed. I laid under that bed for 15 minutes because I didn't want to push the button, or well, I couldn't push the button. The button was on my bed. Luckily, I had a roommate. I had to wait, and I just yelled and asked him to hit the button, and the nurses came in, and it was a big to do. But yeah, I all of that and the above.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
But I
Miss,
have
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss Rita.
gone to my spiritual side.
Yes, please do.
I guess a week or two, they knew that I was going to be discharged for NRH, and I was going to go home, and I would just have to do the things they tell me at home to keep exercising, and they told me how to go about doing that. So the nurse came in, but I still had the trach, so they hadn't taken that out, and they had done the test, Keith, to see if I could swallow. They gave me did they go? Yeah, so they could see. I don't know how they did it, the light, and they chew and they make sure that it went down the right way. And it did, so that worked. So they said, okay, we can do that for you. Nurse came in, and she says to me, and I still have, but this time I still had the trick in, and I couldn't. And she said, I'm going to show you how you're going to catheterize yourself.
How you going to what? Say it again.
Catheter. I had to use a catheter.
Catheter. Okay.
She wanted, and I looked at, and I still couldn't talk, but I'm looking, what? I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to do that. She's, in order to relieve myself, I'm going to have to do this the rest of my life. This is what she's telling me. And I said, no. I'm thinking, no, no, Lord, please, no. So then a few days.
Oh, hold on, Miss Rita. I want to just,
okay, sorry.
No, I want you to continue, but I just want to say, so this is a urinary catheter, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what they're trying to say is that in order for you to move forward, they're thinking you're going to have to put this plastic tube into your urethra in order to drain the urine out.
Yes.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of my life.
All right, continue.
Thank you so much for clarifying that for me. So that's what she was telling me. But I wasn't really listening because I said, oh, Lord, no, I didn't want. So what happened, Keith, they took me downstairs. And this doctor, there's a way they can see if you're going to be able to, like you said, go to the bathroom without the device. And what it is, they put me into a chair, a bottomless chair. And they, I got the right clothing on. And the chair went way up. And when the chair went up, they put a bucket underneath that chair. And however they did it, they started giving me water in my, putting water into me, drinking water to see if I could pass it, in my bladder. So nothing happened, and the doctor's waiting, the nurse is waiting, and there's nothing coming out of me. They put more water and nothing. And I could tell the doctor started walking back and forth, and it seems that his patience was getting thin. And I said, oh my goodness, to myself. And then all of a sudden, I heard this ting, 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 going into that bucket. I tell you, that was the most beautiful sound I ever heard in my. I could not speak, of course, because I had the trach, but if I could have, I hollered out, hallelujah. And I kept screaming it, and the doctor was looking in my mouth, and I know he saw me saying, hallelujah to my God. He saved me. He came to my rescue, and I know that was a spiritual that I had actually knew that was my God coming to my rescue, that today I do not have that device. I have to live with.
Yes.
But he thought,
Yes.
or
Yes.
they thought, they didn't check in with heaven, that I was going to have to live for the rest of my life. So that is I knew it's my
Yes.
God.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy for you. Thank you for sharing. And what I want to do, I want to give you an opportunity to make some final comments to Keith. Ms. Rita, if you can just kind of share some encouragement and some other words of wisdom for him as he continues to go through this process.
I have found some scripture that I just love, and I know you will love it too, Keith. And I wrote it down, and there are about three, and one is really powerful, number 4. And we know that God's word is living and powerful, and that I want to start with Isaiah 41:10, and it says, and this is where God is actually speaking. I felt it, and I know you will too. He is actually, this is God's word, God's mouth saying to me and you. And he says to you, Keith, he says, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. Yes, I will help you. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Now that he's saying that to us, and that just touched when he said, I am your God. I belong to you. That just made life so much. I just felt so good. And I know that's powerful. Number 2 was Lamentations 3:22-23. It says, through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. That's our God. Number 3, Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. I'm going to repeat that one. For he who promised is faithful. And the last one, oh, Keith, listen to this one. Numbers 23:19. God is not a man that he, nor a son of man that he should repent, as he said, and will he not do? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good?
Promise
Amen.
keeper. He's
Thank
a
you.
promise
That's
keeper.
the promises that he has made, and you will see you through.
Mhm. That's it.
Oh, you on mute, Keith. You on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Um, I need that, and that one of the things that I asked God that I'm gonna keep fighting, because I want to be able to give somebody, if they go through this kind of wilderness, if you will, some encouraging words. Because sometimes those little Sunday school verses, I only remember one, which was Jesus wept. That's good. But anyway, those Sunday school verses don't always get it. You need something a little deeper.
Yeah.
But I can promise you that it is a spiritual journey. And the irony of this, and then I'm gonna stop here. Everybody that I met and got a chance to talk to deeply about their experience, because I met another young lady and a couple others, all of them mentioned that how they came out on the other side better as a person. And so you know, I'm just trying to stay encouraged, and will continue to walk my walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't tell you how just you sharing your story, getting to meet you, um, you got another nephew, if you will, because I will be over to visit you. But I'm just going to try to hang in there till God is finished with this journey that I'm on. But thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'll be right there for you in
I love.
prayer. And the churches will keep you. I told my girlfriend yesterday, she's in Vernon Hill, Virginia, not far from North Carolina.
Okay.
And she said, without hesitation, she said, I will be keeping Keith in my prayers,
Thank
and my
you.
church will
I
be
believe.
praying for you. So other churches
Thank
will
you.
do the same. So I
Yeah.
know you're coming forward. So
Thank you.
be encouraged. You
I
are not.
really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Rita. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Renee, for
Thank
sharing
you.
your mother with us
Yeah.
and being able to come on to this program. I want to keep Keith, I have another question for you, but I just want to just say goodnight to Renee and Miss Rita. Thank you so much.
Night.
Thank
No,
you both. I'll be in touch, Renee.
pleasure.
All right.
My
All
pleasure.
right.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye-bye.
That was so powerful,
Mhm.
and I thank her for sharing the story and those scriptures. And Keith, the question I have for you, I know one of the scriptures talked from Isaiah talked about fear not, but hearing some of your story and listening to some of your lives, what what has been your main struggle?
My biggest struggle, honestly, has been the fear of not having enough faith to wait on God. The
Mm,
fear of not having enough faith. Um, I know God is not going to lead me, but God does not always provide you play by play. You got to trust Him. And so um, I don't normally open myself up to, I don't like people in my business, but there's two things. One, I believe in the power of prayer. And so when I get on social media, I'm casting a net, asking any and everybody to pray for me because wherever it's going to come from. But the other part, I have a responsibility also to take care of my responsibilities. And so the reality is, if I don't have any resources, what am I to do? And when social services or the disabilities administration says you need to be on they tell me, have you been evicted yet? There's no help until you're at eviction, or you got to wait a year or so before the disabilities administration will even give you a determination. Living with those fears day by day that I won't be able to take care of myself when I have a 19-year-old son in college, it can be scary. But at the end of the day, I have to grab a hold of that fear and be reminded that um, the devil can't do nothing to me unless God signs the permission slip.
mhm.
And so I'm I just try to control that fear of not having enough faith to wait on God and wait for the blessings to come. But I am encouraged, I promise you.
Yes.
And there's people like you helping me, Justin, you volunteering to say, hey, I think a way of helping you. I can't tell you how much that means to me because I really need the help.
Yeah, yeah. And we talked about a lot of the physical, okay, and now we even some of the emotional. But right now, let's talk about that financial. And
Mhm.
I want you to tell me, and you walked us through a little bit of that with Amazon and your contracting job. But how has your life changed financially?
um, it's changed drastically and completely. Meaning, um, from the day I got diagnosed, the income that would allow me to keep my lifestyle was over. I whatever when I left Amazon late that night, that was the last hour they were going to pay me for. I mean, in reality, the law doesn't even allow you to pay people without them working, and you would get paid for every hour you work. So the reality is, from that day, I had no income coming in. Mind you, if I'm 8 months in the hospital, what am I to do? And so, um, when you talk about finances, I mean, again, I just am thankful that I got fraternity brothers and I got friends. Two of my high school friends said they would set up this GoFundMe thing, and that took off. That allowed all my high school friends to kind of donate, and then of course UMES that they blasted there, and then my fraternity brothers, they work within not just our large community, but my chapter alone, they have just been holding me up, and it's humbling. It's hard to kind of you know keep seeing and trying to make sure people think understand that I appreciate it, but you got to do what you got to do. And so that's really it in a nutshell. Marcia, I don't have anything. I mean, I do get, if you will, help from social services, but that's it. And I'm waiting on the Disability Administration to make a ruling on my case.
Right. And we know that the disability assessment takes a long time. And there's also the potential that you could get denied. And as you were just sharing, you said it's completely changed. Your income is now zero and is based off and you're living off of donations and the goodwill of those that you know.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share this. The purpose of this, Keith did not ask me to bring him on. This was something that I'm like, you know what? Let me use what I do have to help. Yes, gave a donation, but I also knew that there was more that could be done. And there's more financial donations, right? But then there's also people who have knowledge, people who have connections, people who have done this already, people who may know, a process with the Disability Administration, somebody who may know how to get some of the resources that you need, somebody who may have some other ideas to share with Keith so that he can now make some additional moves. Maybe there's somebody who is, who's sitting at home and they want to be more active and they're willing to help you with some of that administrative stuff because they've done it already. These are the some of the opportunities that I'm sharing tonight. Keith has been there's been a struggle, right? We can't help with the physical piece, but we can help with the financial piece because that's also going to give you peace. Okay, PEACE, emotionally.
Yeah.
And we are trusting that God is going to see you through, that He is going to provide people who are going to come and share with you. But what I want is I was able to check out your GoFundMe page, and from what I saw, it was, and I don't know if you have anybody on your team who's able to put that link into the chat, but if that can't go in now, we'll do it as soon as we're done. But I saw it was something like $17,000 raised, but the ask here is so much greater than that. The ask right now is $100,000. One, to be able to keep Keith afloat, okay, with his apartment, with his bills, with his son, with all of the things, so that Keith has been given to people for so long, for so many reasons, and he doesn't even think twice about it. But I'm asking you, if you are able, if you've heard the story, if you've seen him being paralyzed, being intubated for weeks without him even knowing, the road back is long, it's tough, on top of the things that only Keith can do, right? But we can help lessen the load. And so if you are able, whatever amount it is, please donate to the GoFundMe page. It's going towards Keith's livelihood, is going towards the bills that need to get paid. And you've heard the fight in his voice. Okay, I listened to your live one from yesterday, and the mind is working. Okay, the mind is working. Right now, I know you're done. This is the first of 4 surgeries on your hands, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and what else is coming down the pipe? What other recovery are you looking to get?
So next month I have to go up to Baltimore. So there's some neuromuscular specialists at the University of Maryland Hospital that are going to do a consult for my neurologist, because the orthopedic surgeon doesn't want to do any more operating on my hand if the muscles in my hand are not going to develop. Because the bottom line is, if the nerve is not working, you can't develop muscle. And if you're not developing muscle, then all of this bone kind of restructuring is just not going to be worth the time. So, um, because I couldn't close my hand, the orthopedic surgeon has agreed to at least operate on the knuckles to release some of the contraction so that I can start to hold things. So my first surgery again was last week. I got to wait a month, and then they'll do the same surgery on the left hand. Um, I go up to Baltimore to do a consult, and then after that, um, and they'll do another nerve conduction study where they kind of um, stimulate your nerve and see how long the signal takes to get to different extremities, and they'll come up with a synopsis, and then my neurologist and my orthopedic surgeon, all of them will get together and find out, okay, what are we going to do for the remaining, and then other than that, um, I'm just going to have to again wait, and I'm getting stronger and stronger, um, but I have no idea when I'll be able to go back to work. But from a mental standpoint, just trying to stay healthy. I've been catching back up on a lot of things with my health, and I'm glad to say I'm caught up. I do have a procedure. I'm actually doing the procedure tomorrow in the hospital. Um, but you know, you just take it day by day. But those are the immediate things. So the orthopedic surgeon said that it'll be about 6 months um, worth of surgeries that I probably need to be ready for before I even, be able to sort of start thinking about going back to work.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
One of the things, so I'm a physician. I'm also a master destiny life coach. And as I have heard your story, and as we had just been sharing, the thing that I know for a fact is that the struggle that that you're going through, the challenges that you are facing, the heaviness that and the weight that you are having to bear, it's not just for you. Okay. Yes, and we can look at the Bible. Okay, when Jesus healed some of the people, some people were healed just in that moment. Okay, some people some people God spit, or Jesus spit on some mud and put on their eyes. Some people he said go, and you're going to be they got healed as they went. Some people it took some people that died first, and then they were risen from the dead, right? The way that God heals and delivers is going to be different for each person. And as you walk this out, he's showing you something that's going to help you, but it's also going to be pivotal for someone else. And so I heard you the other day, you said you didn't want to share, or you hesitate to share some of the lessons that you've learned because you're still in the fight.
Right.
Okay. That's when he's dropping the nuggets.
He is.
So don't stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay. Don't stop sharing, because people need to hear it in this moment. And they need to hear it raw.
Okay.
Okay. The way you deliver it. There's some bodies who need to hear that. And it's building something else, so that as you get closer and closer to the end, God is going to drop something that is going to be a way for you to help others while you help yourself.
I appreciate that.
I've seen it happen over and over, even for myself, even the struggles and all the things that have happened in my life. We talked about my parents dying, being killed. It's the most horrific thing. But guess what? I've gotten through it. I'm now stronger. I now have a testimony. I can now speak life to people in a way that I couldn't before. And when you are hurting, when you experience pain in the way that you've experienced, there is a rawness, there is a power, there is a what do you call it? You're more intentional. There's nothing that's going to stop you from sharing it. You don't care what somebody else says, because what is being birthed in you has to come out. It's kind of like someone being pregnant and you're trying to stop the baby from coming out. That ain't gonna work. Okay, when God has placed it and now you're birthing it, there's only one way, and that's for it to come out.
I received that.
Right. And so I'm asking for those that are under the sound of my voice, if you would support my friend, our friend, the human, there's UMS in the chat. They have been blowing the thing up. Okay, there's prayers, there's thoughts, there are, I mean, I see some swords, I see Katrina, I see Denise, I see Hillary, I've seen Sewell, right? I see those that have been, I saw Floyd in there a little bit ago, okay? And please donate, okay? And not only a personal donation, but if you know somebody who has a nonprofit, you know somebody who's at a church who you know that they help those that are, you know, in key situation, or if there's anything, anybody, any connection, any networking that can happen that can help Keith get to his next level, please go ahead and reach out. Okay, the GoFundMe page link is going to be in the chat. Just give us a minute, and then we'll take it. We'll take it from there. Please continue to share. Yes.
If I may, you know, we all are financially trying to struggle. I want everybody to understand it is your prayer that is the most powerful currency out there. And it is the one that I believe in the most. I believe in nagging God for my blessing. And so the money is one thing, but prayer is what I need. And that's what you're going to need. That's what we all need. So if you don't do nothing else, pray, pray, pray. And I promise you, I'm going to find a way not only to show my gratitude, but I will make you proud of what you've done. And I will do the best that I can to impart my knowledge and my experience to someone else in order to lighten their load. Thank you again, Marcea.
You're welcome. And I'm gonna co-sign what you just said, but I'm also going to take a scripture from the Bible that says that faith without works is dead. All right. So yes, we can pray, but there's also some work that we can also do.
Amen.
All right. Amen and amen. All right. All right. So with that, I want to thank you for hanging in here with us. And please go ahead and share and, you know, share the video. But we're here as servants, and God is going to get the glory out of this. Just stay tuned. Okay. He never gives us the playbook.
Right.
But I know in the end that we win.
Yep. Bless you.
All right. Bless. All right. So we're going to stay in contact. And again, thank you to those that have stayed in here with us. Thank you to Renee Kelly. Thank you to Miss Rita Robinson. And thank you to Keith for being our very special guest.
Thank you.
Okay. Until next time, take care.
Blessings.